Imagine the most respected leader you know.
Okay, I'm picturing someone.
Like the person who just always has it together, the one everyone turns to when a crisis hits, you know?
Wow.
The ultimate steady hand at the wheel.
Right, the one who never seems to sweat.
Exactly. Now I want you to imagine them pacing the floor at like 3 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, completely paralyzed by a panic attack. Terrified because they have absolutely no idea how the future is going to unfold.
That is a very jarring image.
It really is. And we don't usually picture historical figures or spiritual giants that way, do we? Welcome to today's deep dive, by the way.
Thanks. I'm really glad to be here for this one.
Me too. Because when we look at ancient foundational texts, especially religious frameworks designed for dealing with hardship, we kind of expect to find clean, perfectly polished serenity.
Yeah, you expect these ethereal platitudes that just, float above the grit and messiness of everyday life.
Exactly. But today's deep dive into our source material shatters that expectation completely.
It really does. I mean, it throws you right into the deep end of human frailty. And that is exactly what makes the text we are analyzing today so compelling.
Right. It doesn't pretend the mess doesn't exist.
Not at all.
So our mission today is to explore this short but incredibly dense text. It's titled Finding Comfort in Troubled Times.
And it is packed with practical stuff.
It really is. We are going to unpack its very specific 4-part framework for handling stress, discouragement, and fear.
Which, let's face it, we all deal with.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Whether you are prepping for a massive high-stakes presentation at work or you're just trying to navigate the chaotic reality of modern life, this text offers a really fascinating blueprint for resilience.
It does.
So, okay, let's unpack this. When we look at historical religious texts about comfort, we usually expect calm, ethereal platitudes. But this text starts somewhere completely messy and unexpected, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. I mean, it starts by introducing us to the Apostle Paul.
Right.
Now, the text notes right away that Paul was the chief apostle and leader of the church.
Which is a huge deal.
It's massive. Historically, in the context of antiquity, this is a figure positioned at the absolute pinnacle of supposed spiritual maturity.
Right. He's the ultimate authority figure. You expect a guy with that title to be completely bulletproof.
Exactly. In the ancient Mediterranean world, admitting to severe emotional distress was often viewed as a profound weakness.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The expectation for a leader of his magnitude would be total, unshakable calm. But the text explicitly states that Paul experienced deep discouragement.
Like real stress.
Yes, stress, restlessness, and fear. It quotes a specific account of his time in the province of Macedonia, and the language is just shockingly vivid.
It is. The text says they couldn't settle down and that they were dealing with fights in the church. But the phrases that really jump out to me are when it says they had feels in their hearts that kept them on pins and needles.
Yes, pins and needles.
And that they couldn't relax because they didn't know how it would turn out.
What's fascinating here is the sheer physical reality of that language.
Yeah, it's very visceral.
Exactly. Pins and needles, couldn't relax. I mean, these aren't abstract theological concepts floating in the clouds.
Yeah, not at all.
These are descriptions of a physiological stress response. It is a nervous system on overdrive.
Wow, yeah.
By starting the framework here, the text is doing something highly intentional. It is completely dismantling the myth of the bulletproof leader.
Which is so refreshing.
It really establishes a baseline truth that spiritual maturity, or, secular leadership experience for that matter, does not equal emotional invulnerability.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
Because I feel like we fall into this exact same trap today.
Oh, 100%.
We look at a CEO or a community pillar or even just a parent who seems perfectly put together, and we project this, impenetrable armor onto them.
We just assume they don't sweat the small stuff?
Right. We assume they don't lay awake staring at the ceiling. But hearing that a foundational historical figure like Paul was terrified purely because of uncertainty...
Because he simply didn't know the outcome of his situation.
Exactly. There is a massive sense of relief in that. I mean, it normalizes the anxiety you might be feeling right now.
It does.
It says that feeling overwhelmed is not some kind of modern defect.
It normalizes the anxiety, yes, but crucially, it uses that raw vulnerability as the starting line.
Not the finish line.
Right, not the finish line. The text essentially says, okay, the fear is real, the physical stress is real, even for the great leaders. So where do we actually pull strength from when we hit that wall?
And that pivot introduces the first of the 4 solutions in this framework.
Yes. finding comfort through presence, specifically God's presence.
And it doesn't just offer this presence as like a generic blanket for a bad day.
No, it gets very specific.
It outlines very specific emotional states that this presence is meant to address, pulling references from across various historical writings.
It covers a lot of ground.
It does. It says this presence is for when you are mourning, referencing Matthew 5.4. It's for when you are brokenhearted, citing Psalm 147.3. It's for when you feel overwhelmed, worried, or unwell. I mean, it basically covers the entire spectrum of human misery.
It really leaves no stone unturned.
But there is a massive critical caveat that the text drops immediately after listing those states.
Yes, the text states very clearly and emphatically, it says, but we must acknowledge his presence and accept his comfort.
Accept his comfort.
Right. It is not an automatic transaction.
And that detail completely stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Because it implies a paradox. Like, you can be fully immersed in a comforting environment, completely surrounded by a presence meant to heal you, and still remain entirely uncomforted.
If you don't take a specific action.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, comfort, in the way this text defines it, isn't something that can just be passively absorbed through osmosis.
You can't just stand there and wait for it to happen.
No. It requires a fundamental psychological shift. You have to actively acknowledge the resource available to you and make a conscious choice to receive it.
It's a participatory model.
A participatory model of comfort, yes.
But I do have to push back here, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
If someone is truly drowning in a panic attack or just crushed by grief, telling them, you know, you just aren't accepting the comfort hard enough, that feels dangerously close to victim blaming.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, it sounds like we are turning comfort into just another chore that they are failing at. How does the text avoid making this acceptance feel like a burden?
That is a vital distinction to make, actually. The text isn't framing acceptance as a test of willpower or like an endurance sport.
Okay.
It is pointing to a fundamental barrier in human psychology.
It is.
Well, often, enduring pain, as miserable as it is, feels familiar. It feels like we are still somehow in control.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
To accept comfort requires dropping your defenses. It requires admitting, I cannot handle this on my own.
It's just hard.
Very hard. And it takes us right back to why the text started by breaking down the myth of the bulletproof leader. Pride and the deeply ingrained desire for self-sufficiency are massive barriers to relief.
So it's less about exerting effort and more about surrender.
Precisely.
You know, it makes me think about muscle cramps.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you have a severe cramp in your leg, your immediate instinct is to curl up and tense every muscle around it.
Right, to protect yourself from the pain.
Exactly. But tensing up is exactly what makes the cramp worse.
Oh, that's true.
Accepting comfort means forcing yourself to relax the very muscle that your brain is screaming at to stay tense.
Which is terrifying.
Right. It is completely counterintuitive.
That is a highly accurate way to view it.
Well,
the muscle we are tensing is our illusion of control. Releasing it allows the presence described in the text to actually engage with the pain. But of course, the framework recognizes that internal surrender is incredibly difficult to sustain in a vacuum.
Because we're only human.
Right. There is a limit to what we can do entirely within our own heads, which is why the framework doesn't stop at internal acceptance.
It moves on.
It moves logically to the next two parts, which are highly actionable external tools.
Right. It transitions to finding comfort through word and through prayer.
Yes.
And again, the text does not use gentle, flowery language to describe engaging with these tools.
Not at all. For the second point, finding comfort in the word, it quotes Psalm 119.
And the language is striking.
It really is. It says, I hang on to these words for dear life.
Oh, for dear life.
And it continues. It says, these words hold me up in bad times. Yes, your promises rejuvenate me.
Hang on for dear life. That is pure survival state language.
It really paints a picture.
It does. It's the feeling of dangling off the edge of a cliff with your fingers slipping. This isn't about reading a nice inspirational quote on a coffee mug to start your morning.
No, it implies that the words themselves serve as the only tether keeping the person from spiraling into total panic.
Wow.
In the historical context of these writings, spoken and written promises carried immense structural weight.
What do you mean by structural weight?
Like they were binding realities? Hanging on to them meant anchoring your mind to something immutable when your external circumstances were in absolute chaos.
That makes a lot of sense.
And notice how this solitary tethering pairs perfectly with the third point, prayer.
Right, the third tool.
The text quotes Psalm 138 saying, "The moment I called out, you stepped in. You made my life large with strength."
The moment I called out.
Yes.
There is no delay there. It's an immediate intervention.
This raises an important question about how the text views the mechanism of prayer.
How so?
It isn't framed as a delayed transaction. It's not like putting your request in a cosmic suggestion box and waiting 3 to 5 business days for circumstances to improve.
Right, like an email to customer service.
Exactly. It frames the act of calling out, of articulating the fear,
Mm.
as the catalyst for an instantaneous internal shift.
Which mirrors what we know today about the neurobiology of stress.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Psychologists talk about affect labeling.
Effect labeling.
Yeah, it's basically the idea that the moment you put a profound fear into words, whether you are saying it out loud to yourself, to a therapist, or in a prayer, the amygdala's response actually begins to decrease.
That is fascinating.
Right. The mere act of naming the terror lessens its grip on your nervous system.
The text takes that psychological reality and adds its theological framework to it.
Mm-hmm.
The act of calling out doesn't just calm the brain. According to the text, it invites an external strength into the space that the fear was previously occupying.
So what does this all mean?
Good question.
Especially regarding that specific, beautiful phrase, "You made my life large with strength."
It is a great phrase.
When I read that, I wondered, does the trouble itself disappear? Or does the person's capacity to handle the trouble expand? It feels like the analogy of a balloon.
A balloon.
Yeah. If you have a small balloon and you force a massive amount of air pressure into it, the rubber stretches to its breaking point and it pops. But if that balloon suddenly expands, if it is made large with strength so it can hold twice as much volume, the pressure is still there.
Mm-hmm.
The air hasn't gone away. But the capacity to hold it without breaking has fundamentally changed.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. The phrasing is very deliberate.
Yeah.
The text doesn't say, "You made my problem small." The conflicts in the church that Paul was dealing with in Macedonia didn't magically vanish the moment he called out.
The fights were still happening.
Right. The uncertainty of how things would turn out remained entirely real. But the internal capacity to withstand those pressures was upgraded.
The resilience was expanded.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's track where we are in the blueprint.
Let's review.
We have the internal prerequisite of accepting presence, which requires relaxing that cramped muscle of pride.
Mm-hmm.
We have the external anchors of hanging on to the word for dear life.
Yeah.
And we have the immediate capacity building of calling out in prayer.
All very important.
But there is a limit here, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
These first three methods are highly solitary. You can accept comfort, read the words, and articulate the fear alone in a dark room. But what happens when you are simply too exhausted to hold on to that tether? When your grip fails?
And it will fail eventually.
Right. That is where the framework steps outside the individual. It pivots beautifully for the fourth point to complete the structure.
Yes. The text completes its framework by introducing a shared communal reality. Comfort delivered through godly friends.
And it brings back Paul for a wonderfully literal, specific example.
It does.
It says, God comforted us by the coming of Titus.
I love that line.
Me too. Titus wasn't a glowing apparition. He wasn't some supernatural event.
No.
He was just a guy, a
Yeah.
colleague, a friend.
This is where the divine and the human intersect in the text's framework.
Yes.
The comfort Paul received wasn't purely a mystical feeling of peace dropping from the sky, nor was it just a cognitive shift from prayer.
It was tangible.
The comfort literally walked through the front door in the physical form of a friend named Titus.
Wow.
The text is making a profound practical and theological claim here. Human connection is a primary delivery system for this strength.
I love how that grounds the ancient wisdom right in your living room today.
It really does.
When we're stressed out, we often look for a flashing neon sign to fix our problems. We want the sea to part or the project to just cancel itself.
We want a miracle.
Exactly. But sometimes the lifeline is just a friend showing up with takeout or a text message checking in when you're on pins and needles.
The comfort is incarnated in the people around us.
But I have to push back on this just a little.
Sure, go ahead.
Doesn't relying on human beings like Titus make this whole system incredibly fragile?
In what way?
Well, humans are messy. What if Titus misses his boat? What if he shows up but says the wrong thing and actually makes the stress worse?
That happens a lot.
Right. Putting the climax of your comfort framework in the hands of flawed people seems like a massive vulnerability.
It is a vulnerability, without question,
Yeah.
but that is the genius of the framework.
How so?
It doesn't deny the messiness of human interaction. It embraces it as an essential feature of the design.
No, interesting.
Yes, a person might be unreliable, but they are also tangible. When you are operating on pins and needles, sometimes a cognitive anchor or solitary prayer isn't enough to regulate your nervous system.
You need something real.
You need a physical presence. You need someone sitting in the trenches with you, helping to regulate your panic with their own presence.
Wow.
The text suggests that the comfort is actually powerful precisely because it is mediated through the shared human experience, flaws included.
That is so profound.
It is the ultimate validation that we are not wired to process profound stress and isolation.
Which brings all these threads perfectly together as we move to the final sections of our source text.
Yes, it ties it all up nicely.
After laying out this comprehensive four-part framework, presence, word, prayer, and friends, the text provides a reflection and a prayer to synthesize everything into action.
The reflection section offers a very clear two-part mandate for the reader.
What does it say?
It says, today, look for those who bring comfort and practice comforting others.
It is a brilliant call to action.
It really is.